Cold Case 1979, Newcastle's missing teenage girls, 4 other missing teenage girls and young women. This is the third video in my series inspired by last month's reports that police have a new suspect in the disappearances of 2 teenage girls from the Newcastle area in 1979. In this video, I will discuss details surrounding the disappearances of 4 other teenage girls and young women in the Newcastle area during late 1978 and 1979. But firstly, I'll start with an update about Robyn Hickie and her link to the Gold Coast businessman who is now a suspect. An NBN News story last week on the 19th of December 2019 stated they both went to Belmont High School, were the same age and knew each other.
Now we can reveal he grew up in Belmont and went to Belmont High School, the same school and around the same age as Robyn Hickie and her friend Kerry.
In recent days, having done a bit of searching, yes, I do remember him. He wasn't somebody I knew very well. I can actually visually recall him now.
As you'll see later in this video, I have found additional information that links the new suspect to another 18-year-old girl who disappeared less than 4 months earlier. From my personal recollection, I thought that apart from Robyn Hickie and Amanda Robinson, there were 3 more teenage girls and young women who'd mysteriously disappeared around 1979 and were never heard from again. But I actually found 4 others who disappeared at this time. There might even be more. 2 of the ones I found I don't recall hearing about before. The first disappearance that I believe I remember hearing about at the time, and have often heard about over the years, is that of 20-year-old LeAnn Goodall. Most sources say she was dropped off at Muswellbrook Station by her brother and was last seen at the Star Hotel in Newcastle on 30th of December 1978 and was never seen or heard from again. As an aside, the Star Hotel made worldwide news in 1979 when a drunken riot occurred that included police cars being overturned and burned. Recently, a 26-minute documentary about the Star Hotel riot was posted on YouTube. I will put a link at the end of this video and in the description below. Now, getting back to LeAnn Goodall's disappearance, when she left the Star Hotel, she is believed to have been heading to a bus stop to catch a bus to her mother's home. An article in the Newcastle Herald in 1998 states LeAnn Goodall disappeared in mysterious circumstances from a Newcastle hotel 20 years ago, after intending to travel to her mother's Belmont home to stay the night. This article was about a police search for a suspected bushland grave at Belmont. The same article says that the search area was less than 10 minutes walk from the family home in 1979. What I found especially interesting was that the 1979 home of the Queensland businessman that is currently a suspect in the disappearances of Robyn Hickie and Amanda Robinson was also within a 10-minute walk of the suspected bushland grave and LeAnn Goodall's mother's home. So now it appears there is a link between the Gold Coast businessman, Robyn Hickie, and LeAnn Goodall. Now, over the years, media reports and previous inquests and inquiries have usually included LeAnn Goodall's disappearance with that of Robyn Hickie and Amanda Robinson. However, The current police investigation, Strikeforce Arapema, does not include LeAnn Goodall's disappearance. In light of this association, perhaps it should. The current investigation does include a third girl, 16-year-old Gordana Katevsky, who was witnessed being abducted at Charlestown on the 24th of November 1994 and has never been seen or heard from again. I have read that the current investigation has only included these three cases as the circumstances are similar. Personally, I can't see any greater similarities to some others who disappeared around 1979 and Gordana's disappearance, which was 15 years later. I'm not saying they are not connected, but you wonder why this later disappearance is included, but other disappearances from the late 70s have been excluded. I guess one of the big problems with LeAnn Goodall's disappearance was that police did not even open a formal inquiry into her disappearance at the time. At the 2002 inquest, the detective in charge at Newcastle in 1978 acknowledged her disappearance should have been investigated, but didn't know why it wasn't. Another disappearance that I definitely remember hearing about in 1979 was that of 16-year-old Amanda Solace. She was last seen on the 12th of October 1979 at a bus stop at Hamilton, though she did ring her father a few hours later to say she was going to Queensland and was coming home to pick up some clothes before going. She didn't go home and has not been seen or heard of since. This was a Friday night. I looked through every page of the Newcastle Herald for the following week and did not see an article anywhere about her disappearance. So, I'm assuming little, if any, attention was given to her disappearance at the time, and that likewise the police assumed she was just another runaway. One interesting aspect I do find is that the current investigation is looking for information from anyone who may remember a green Torana in the local area 40 years ago that may have also been going to and from Queensland. Amanda Solace told her father she was going to Queensland. Could the person responsible for her disappearance have been suggesting they go to Queensland? Is this a possible connection? Maybe it was this current suspect, who is now a Gold Coast businessman. Just a thought. I also noted in another 1998 article in the Newcastle Herald about the suspected Belmont bushland grave, it was stated, "The search will centre on Ms. Goodall, who disappeared on December 30, 1978, and Amanda Solace, 16, who went missing 9 months later in October 1979. During that period, 2 other girls disappeared, Robyn Hickie, 18, and 14-year-old Amanda Robinson. They went missing from the Belmont area within days of each other in April 1979. So, at the very least, I hope Strikeforce Arapema are considering the disappearances of LeAnn Goodall and Amanda Solace as part of their current investigations. My research also uncovered the disappearance of 2 other teenage girls. I do not recall having previously heard about their disappearances, but it seems they actually disappeared together. They were 18-year-old Joy Hodgins and 17-year-old Annie Dominic. They were never seen again after heading to the Ambassador nightclub in Newcastle on July 17, 1978. However, their disappearances were not linked until 20 years later in 1998. Just like the other cases, police simply considered they were runaways at the time. An article in the Newcastle Herald on the 28th of March 1998 states, Annie's family said yesterday that when their daughter went missing in 1978, she was treated as a runaway. Now, after 19 years, police had reopened the file. The last time Mrs. Dominic saw her daughter was July 17, 1978. Mrs. Dominic said her 17-year-old daughter was not happy at home and packed up her clothes and some photographs and ran away. Concerned for her safety, her parents reported her missing to Adamstown Police 3 weeks later. Annie was eventually tracked down by police in 1979, but told them she was now 18 and did not want her family to know where she was living. Annie reassured police she would telephone her mother to tell her she was all right. She never rang. In all other reports I saw, all indications were that Annie Dominic was never seen or heard of again by anyone after July 17, 1978. So, this raises the question, did the police actually find her? Or perhaps they just told the parents that to fob them off. 7 days after the Newcastle Herald's article about Annie Dominic's disappearance, they had an article about the disappearance of Joy Hodgins. No link was made between the two girls. The article says, vanishing after a night out in Newcastle, the 18-year-old never returned to the flat she shared with a friend and her dog. She went out that night and obviously she met with foul play, Ms. Hunt, her cousin, said. It used to annoy me that no one cared. I just think it was so tragic because she was an orphan and no one did anything about it. She said that when Ms. Hodgins' adoptive brother Anthony sought out her file in 1990, he was told that there was no record of her. They didn't have anything, she said. They didn't even have a file on her. The day after this article, the Newcastle Herald reported that a friend of one of these two girls had just come forward and said that Joy Hodgins, 18, and Annie Dominic, 17, were together the night they disappeared on July 17, 1978. Ms. Hodgins and Ms. Dominic were last seen by friends at Ms. Hodgins' home in Margaret Street, Mayfield, before heading to the Ambassador. Ms. Dominic is understood to have run away from home that month and was staying with her 18-year-old friend. Elizabeth Dominic, Annie's mother, recalls going to the Mayfield house after her daughter's disappearance. I met somebody there and she told me that they went to the dance and didn't come back the next day. The same day's paper says investigators are examining the possibility they were murdered by a serial killer. The head of Strike Force Fenwick, Acting Superintendent Ron Smith, confirmed yesterday detectives were well aware of links between the 6 cases. I also came across a 1998 theory about a connection between Annie Dominic, Joy Hodgins, LeAnn Goodall, and a young woman who disappeared in 1982. The remains of this young woman were found 10 years later. The theory is that they were all murdered by the same person. I will discuss this in my next video and who the killer, now dead, may have been if the theory is correct. I did have a personal theory of my own at one stage. My theory was that the missing girls may have been buried under the highway at Gateshead. Major roadworks were undertaken from the late 1970s to the early 80s, upgrading the highway at Gateshead to the multi-laned road it is today. My thoughts were reinforced with Ivan Milat considered a person of interest, as he was a road worker in Newcastle at the time and would most likely have worked on that road. But there's also a lot of bushland in the area. There was a lot more back then, so who knows? In the fourth video in this series, I will discuss another sexual predator, now dead, who was also in the Newcastle area at the time, and the 1998 theory that could link this sexual predator to 3 of the disappearances in late 1978. If I have already uploaded this video, you can click on the link at the end of this video or in the description below. Otherwise, subscribe to my channel, click on the bell icon, and you will be notified as soon as I upload it. As promised, I've also included the link to the documentary on the Star Hotel riot at the end of this video in the description below. Also, remember to contact police if you have any information that may help them in regards to the disappearances of Robyn Hickie, Amanda Robinson, or any other person, or information about a green Torana that may also have travelled between Newcastle and Queensland 40 years ago. Contact details are also in the description below. I'm David A. Elliott. Try to have a good one and see you around like a rissole.